Robert, could you speak a little bit about vowel modification transitions? Vowel modification is referring to singing vowels, not linguistic speaking vowels. We're all clear on that? Okay. When we talk about vowel modification, one way to sort of sort this out and understand it that's really helpful is think about active versus passive, okay? And this idea of active and passive applies to other things that we do. Active or passive cry mode, active or passive larynx dampening, active or passive embouchure shaping. It applies to other things. But for vowel modification in particular, so active simply translates to you're aware of it. You're consciously trying to do it. You're consciously trying to modify a vowel, because in the book there's vowel modification formulas that you're following in your training. That if you're following one of these vowel modification routines, okay, in the training program, you are engaged in active vowel modification. You're aware of it. You're purposely trying to turn that A into an A, or whatever it may be. Okay. The other kind of vowel modification that happens is passive vowel modification. That is that the color and the resonance will modify and change as you go higher and lower in frequency, sort of unaware. It's just a natural movement of the resonance. So if you're singing well, you'd have to be singing well with registration and fluidity and dexterity and agility. So if you're training and singing with agility and you're doing well, you're bridging through chest voice, head voice, through the vocal break, and maybe you're thinking, maybe you're singing a song or what have you, but this is all going very nicely. There is passive vowel modification going on behind the scenes. You can hear the colors and you can feel the resonance sort of moving as you're articulating around in the melody and stuff. But you're not consciously focusing on a training routine in the book, right? So it's not active, all right? It's passive. So that's one good way to be thinking about vowel modification for singing. We modify for different reasons. One, we engage in active vowel modification, which is illustrated here in the book and in the course, for training purposes. All right, you might have 30 to 120 minutes available, and you might decide, okay, for 30 minutes, I'm going to do octave sirens, and I'm going to train A to all right, or A to ah, or ah to ishness. There are different vowel modification formulas in the book. If you're looking for something to do, if you're that guy with a big heart and you want to train hard, go in the book. I think there's something like 18 vowel modification formulas. Some are easy, some are hard. All right. So if you're training and you got that 30 to 120 minutes we talked about, then you would purposely be working on that sequence of resonance and color movements as you trained over the content. Okay. So you do it for training. You do it to build strength and endurance and motor skills. Okay. Another reason why we engage in vowel modification is in singing. When we're singing and we're engaged in the art form, sometimes we need to tweak that vowel. Sometimes we need to tweak that resonance to get the lyric to come out right. So what you can do, one thing you can do is you can actively modify those closed vowel colors in your lyrics to more open positions. For example, E can modify to A when you're singing, okay? Oo can modify to O, okay? So I'll give you an example. Me and you. Those are very closed language vowels, all right? If I want to take that higher in frequency, I can do this. Me and you. It's okay. I mean, that's not all wrong. It's all right. But I could actively modify the vowel to go example of active vowel modification inside singing, okay, for the purpose of making a certain section of the song a little bit easier to sing. Now, in regards to modifying those closed vowels in singing, I don't recommend that you do it all the time. I think sometimes it's a good idea. Sometimes it's the best idea. If you just keep falling on your ass 100 times, maybe you just, and you're in the studio and the clock is running, maybe you just modify the vowel and make it easier. Go to that open position, it's a little easier, just get it done. Sometimes it's practical, just to make it easier, you modify the vowel, okay? But it's important, super important that you don't always do that. It's sort of an easy way out of the narrow vowel. It's really super important that you also practice singing those narrowed vowel positions on the hard parts. So when you're singing a song and it gets difficult and you come across E, U, E, or O, don't immediately retreat and actively modify that vowel and widen it. Don't immediately do that. Try to work on it, because one, you need to be able to sing the closed sound colors on high notes. You need to be able to do that. It's something you should be able to do. And two, the simple act of working on it. The simple act of working on the mechanism and the musculature required to amplify a narrowed language vowel on a high note, which is difficult. Just going through the motions of working on it makes you stronger. And one reason why you want to also modify vowels in songs, I'll make this quick, is because if all of your lyrics sound like language vowels, it can come off a little bit amateurish sounding. All right. For example, watch. I'll just do something sort of simple. From Iron Maiden, I'm going to use pure language vowels inside this as I sing. I'm waiting in my cold cell when the bell begins to chime, reflecting on my past life, and it doesn't have much time, because at 5 o'clock they take me to the gallows pole. That's using a lot of the language vowels, but you know, if I actively take some of those narrowed language vowels and I kind of open some of them up, maybe not all, but I kind of open some of them up, it's much prettier. It sounds more like singing.
Cause at 5 o'clock they take me to the ground.